Welcome to the Business Spotlight series. I'm Sean Shornmacher, the owner of Action Coach Dallas, where we are helping business owners build and grow their businesses to ultimately improve their lives. Today we have Loe Hornbuckle with the Sage Oak, and so he's our guest this morning. How you doing, Loe?
I'm doing well, Sean. How about yourself?
Doing pretty well. Thanks for coming on today. We appreciate you being willing to share some of the insights about the Sage Oak and some of your trials and tribulations and help folks better understand maybe some of the learnings you've had so they can apply to their businesses. Um, so if this is your first time on the channel, be sure to like and subscribe, do all those things, of course, so you can see all the other content that we post that's, again, also going to be useful and valuable for you as a business owner. So, Lo, without further ado, maybe you could introduce us to your business, tell us what your company does and the problems that you solve.
Yeah, thanks for having me. So I think probably start with the problem we solve is that there's a an incredible aging population in the United States and some other countries as well. And one of the challenges that the industry's really faced of taking care of people, whether it be from an assisted living perspective or a dementia care perspective, is how do we meet this growing demand while still allowing space for highly personalized care? If you think about, congregate housing for 100 people, it's by definition going to struggle to be personalized. And so, our solution to that is we offer very small, intimate settings ranging from 8 to 16 beds that basically allow that if you were to move into assisted living or dementia care, you'd move in with 15 other people or 7 other people and not, a couple hundred or 100 other people. And so it really recenters the home as sort of the place, the setting in which care, communal meals, right, engagement, those types of things can happen in a home setting. So our company is basically a boutique assisted living and memory care provider, kind of focused on creating really intimate, personalized spaces to meet the growing demand of folks that need assistance with dementia or assistance with physical mobilities, like in the case of assisted living.
Hmm. Yeah, I think what you do is awesome. We have coincidentally worked with a business like yours, but I've seen some of the differences. You see the huge sort of facilities, I'd probably call them, right? The big,
Right.
ginormous ones you mentioned, 100 people plus, and those it's kind of like being in a hotel, right? Like it's not maybe not as home, and maybe that's not even like a hotel. My point is a little bit more commercialized. You feel that, but in your environment, it feels like a home. It feels like a house, like not a home, but like a house. So I think it's much more intimate, very different feel, and I think a lot of people really enjoy that, especially if they're going to be there most of their later life. So let's move into what makes your business maybe so special. So, how and why did you start this business?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, just about everybody that's gotten into this business, gotten into elder care, right, assisted living or memory care or whatever adjacent to that, they usually had a personal experience, and I'm no different. Ultimately, I started the company right after my dad passed away. He had, gone through some treatment, had a form of cancer, and ultimately the healthcare system really didn't do him any favors, especially that at-home support system that was supposed to be there. And so that kind of, set me on a path in which I wanted to do something different. In the past, I'd been more in business and never really done anything, sort of in the healthcare hospitality space. And so my dad's experience led me to ask questions, and ultimately the answer was Sage Oak. So that's just a little bit about why we started the company. So this was 2014 that my dad passed, and we started the
Mm,
company in 2015.
mm. Yeah, so been on it for a while. I know we actually recently ran into at an event last week. So talk about small world, I suppose, here even in Dallas, Texas. But someone was saying that you were maybe is it the biggest or one of the biggest in DFW?
Yeah, so there, it's certainly it's a you can define anything however you want to define it. So as
Yeah,
a
the
joke, when I
biggest,
was
the
like,
largest. Yeah,
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 so as a joke, like I used to be a car dealer, and you'd hear these commercials like we're the number one
yeah,
dealership in
exactly.
Southwest, Eastern, Central
Yeah,
Tennessee. So
yeah.
yes, but in the space of residential assisted living or sort of boutique assisted living and memory care, which we actually have a trademark on that phrase, but In that space, we're one of the largest. Most companies that get large do so with 100 bed, 80 bed, transactions, and so it is by definition hard to be large in a space
And
that's
boutique.
designed to be small, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So yes, we're one of the major players in that space, and that's it's by design. I mean, a lot of people when they get into this industry, they focused on being the largest, and when you're the largest, you pursue lots of interesting markets, right? It's really hard to be the best at this in Miami, in Maine, in Seattle, in Phoenix, all at the same time, right? So all of our communities are within a 45-minute car ride of each other
Mm,
or in the case of Louisiana, a 45-minute plane ride. So, what that allows for, you really want to be scaled in this space because if you have one or two care homes, you're never going to have the team necessary to execute and be competitive from a quality perspective with some of these bigger places. But if you've got multiple houses or multiple locations to where you have the same number of beds as a bigger facility, but
mhm,
you still so instead of having one big facility, if you have eight bed homes, then
mhm,
you get the same revenue profile as you would from a big building, but you still get all the personalization. You create these eight unique environments. You create all, sometimes location is really important, right? A loved one wants to walk, 2 or 3 blocks. And so what this allows us to do is allows us to really have really competitive quality and really competitive team in terms of the quality of the team while not sacrificing the individualization or the personalization. So, like anything, there's definitely a Goldilocks principle. Most people can get too big too fast, and you can see quality really start to drop.
mhm,
So our perspective on this is that you want really intentional growth, and you want to make sure that that growth is geographically tight, right? Even something an hour and a half away in DFW, it's going to have a whole different hospital system, potentially different county, different vendors. So it's very rare for someone that's in Fort Worth to be looking at assisted living in Dallas and vice versa. And so really you want to have really tight geographic footprint inside of a sub-market or an area, right? So if you're going to do business in one market, you want to get to the right amount of houses to have scale in that market. And then what it means for the customers is that they have a great team, they have nursing oversight, they have regional support nearby, and so what that
mhm.
means is just a better resident experience, a better family experience. My dog has joined the podcast.
Yes.
He's like, oh, he's talking. It's time for me to go to sleep.
Nice. Yeah, good stuff. Yeah, and so on that, again, you're maybe one of the biggest in the boutique space. So obviously, there's other people out there, there's other competitors. So what would you say makes you guys different, or what's unique?
Yeah, so I mean, number one, as far as uniqueness is that we don't have everything that's required for us to grow and expand and start our company is in-house. So that really matters. And so typically when you do even when you do an assisted living project or a memory care project, you'll have a developer, you'll have a builder, you have a person that raises capital, right? You'll have the bank, investors, in an operations company, right? And the list goes on and on. We actually occupy all the seats at the table there. And so I'm an operator who has the ability to raise capital. I'm an operator who
Mhm,
has the ability to design great facilities, can
mhm,
oversee the construction of them. And so
mhm,
what that means is that we really don't have to make a lot of the sacrifices that come with a typical project. So in a development project, there's something called the value engineering phase, and what that is when you're taking a pen and you're slashing things that you don't think are going to have a good ROI. And if you're not an operator, if you don't know how to, build a place that the team wants to work at, if you don't know how to build a community that the family members are going to want to visit and residents are going to want to live in, then the things that you cut might be things that are very important. So I think
mhm.
one big differentiator is that we don't have multiple different voices at the table.
Yeah.
So whenever we do a project, the project comes from a place of an operator who wants to have the best resident experience, the best family experience, and the best staff experience. That's a big differentiator. And probably the other thing is that we're really in Dallas in particular, very premier locations. We're in Preston Hollow, we're in Lakewood, and so we have really walkable communities. And so people that are in Preston Hollow, University Park, people that are in Lakewood, for those of you that know the Dallas area, those neighborhoods, they kind of like to stay in them. And so the ability to be able to walk or have just a couple minute car ride and pull up to a home that that you maybe didn't even know was a small assisted living or memory care facility. It adds
Mhm.
a certain experience for the families in particular that's very hard to replicate. Obviously, housing prices have continued to go up, and so there really isn't a ton of opportunity for someone to go behind us just because our all-in basis is from 10 years ago versus today, right? You probably couldn't buy lots for to build on for what we own our houses for from
Yeah.
2015. And then
Yeah.
maybe the third thing would be we have a commitment to food at Sage Oak that really, really sets us apart. I think a lot of people pay lip service to the food experience, and sometimes you'll see big places will do celebrity chefs. Not that they actually show up, but they have a deal with the
Mhm.
celebrity chef or something. And so we actually have each meal service happens in the house individually, and so
Mhm.
we don't necessarily have a menu happening all throughout Sage Oak campuses at the same time. So that personalization is there, right? If you've got 8 people that want to eat a certain thing in one house and 8 people that want to eat another thing in the same house, it doesn't make sense to not cater to that. And then we do the same thing with our engagement program. We don't have a big, national engagement calendar where we're telling people, okay, here's what fun you're going to have today. We leave that up to the site teams to have culturally appropriate engagement, right? If we have a community in Louisiana, maybe they're going to celebrate Mardi Gras a little bit more than
Mhm.
then we have Cesar Chavez Day today in
Mhm.
Texas, right? So I
Nice.
don't know if they celebrate that in in Lake
Yeah.
Charles, Louisiana. So so the food and the engagement being very personalized is really a big part of who we are. We get to know the residents on a level that's very hard to match in any other place.
Nice. Sounds like my wife might enjoy your spots, and she's not even, that old. So you guys got good locations, got good food. Those are two important things to her, and for a
Yeah.
lot of other people. So, and then you mentioned, like you said, having all things in house. Of course, when you have, 5, 10 stakeholders, well, there's some give and take. Not every stakeholder is going to kind of get for sure everything that they would want. Um, but you guys are the stakeholders, all of them. So we've worked with design build companies, for example, architecture firms. And of course, the argument is, hey, look, we don't have to hand it off to the builders. We are the builders. So we understand the design and do it better. And you guys are all the same. You get the operators, you do, I mean, everything. So of course, that comes with a lot of benefits. So that's pretty cool. Um, let's see. Next question I had for you. Um, so what about marketing? What's because a lot of businesses have challenges with marketing. It's probably one of the more interesting topics I think a lot of businesses are interested in because they're always wanting to get better at marketing. What about for you? What's been like the number one maybe marketing strategy that's brought you the most clients or business?
Yeah, I mean, so really there's kind of three yeah, there's really kind of three places that you get referrals, right? So the first is digital, right? So obviously people find you on the website, right? So that I think everyone probably understands that. Kind of the second thing is I would say internal, right? So this is a staff member or a resident or resident's family referring you, so a referral from an existing client. And then, out in the broader marketplace, there are kind of these things that we call choke points or linchpins. These are the types of people that play a huge role in the decision-making process of where a senior goes for assisted living. So these are the people like case managers at hospitals or
Mm-hmm.
social workers, particular doctor's office, right? You'd think about a neurologist being a really important person in, someone that has dementia, kind of choosing a place to live. So out in the marketplace, so what we've really found is at the end of the day, right? Digital is what it is. You've got to have a good presence. You've got to do certain things, but people have to be able to find you. But a lot of times they go looking for you based on your reputation, either with your existing clients and their friends and family, or the relationship that you have with the choke points and the linchpins out in the marketplace, right? So someone may find your website and you think they're a web lead, but really the social worker said, hey, you need to
Mm-hmm.
call Sage Oak because they would be a good fit for what it is that you're trying to do. So I think for us, the big key is just, being in relationships and offering value to the people that are going to be really important in the decision-making process for someone choosing assisted living or memory care. So it's very hand to hand. It's a lot of lunches. It's a lot of people coming into the community and retouring. It's a lot of interpersonal skills amongst our team and their team. Most referrals are ops to ops, meaning the operations team at a hospice company or the operations team at a home health company is sending you a referral because they like your operations team. So it's
Yeah.
usually nurse to nurse, right? Or therapist to nurse more so than it
Hmm.
is marketer to marketer. I mean, you have some of that, but at the end of the day, your ability to market is really just your ability to attract people so that you can make a promise to them and to make a promise that you're going to do a good job for them 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, and 366 in a leap year. So, because this is a relationship business and not a transactional business, marketing is important. But generally, your best marketing strategy is to have a great operational team, right? Your best marketing strategy is to have a great food program. Your best marketing strategy is to have a great clinical team that can help do chronic disease management for the residents. If you
Hmm.
do those things well, then you don't really have a marketing problem because you're so far head and shoulders above so many of the people out in the marketplace that are effectively, you walk into 100 assisted living facilities and they're going to be 80% the same, right? So being unique and creating these opportunities where people who have exposure to you or have professional reasons to respect you, I think that's the best marketing there is, versus, running Facebook ads.
Hmm. Yeah, so do good work, right? Do good work. People
Yeah.
then are gonna say, "Hey, I know someone that does this really well, and let me refer you." And yeah, so you mentioned client referrals, basically client referrals. You also mentioned, we call strategic partners, call them linchpins, people like that. Um, and then of course the online presence, which you can't get away from even if you wanted to at this point. So good stuff. Let's see, what else did I have for you? So obviously doing this about 10 years,
Yep.
so had a lot of different trials and tribulations, I'm sure. Looking back, what do you think has been either the most memorable or maybe the hardest challenge that you've had, and how'd you overcome
Yeah, I mean, wow, that's a heavy one in my case. So,
it?
from a guy that started the company, because his dad passed away, I've had a business partner pass away in the middle of a project. I would say that would be
Wow.
pretty memorable and obviously challenging. I've had natural disasters, I've had floods, I've had lightning strike, I've had hurricanes. All those things are memorable in their own way. I think at the end of the day, what it really boils down to is if someone were to ask me, I used to work with students, right? I know you're a coach, and I used to coach people specifically in this. I'm not a business coach, but I coach people on this specific
Hmm.
thing. And when people ask me, like, what do you think the most important trait is for someone to possess in this business? My answer is actually grit. So I think, it's hard to develop and open assisted living facilities. It's hard to operate them. It's hard to hire all the staff, and it's hard to, do all the things necessary. And so I think because of that, instead of seeing them as, setbacks or challenges, it's just letting you get your armor in order because you're going to face real challenges and problems when you open, right? When you have people taking care of people. I mean, I didn't ever think that 10 years ago we would have a couple hundred employees, right, taking care of, 150-ish residents or 160 residents. And so, ultimately what that means is that you've got to be really adept at dealing with the stuff that happens to people, right? And managing the emotional energy of your team. They're going to have flat tires. They're going to have, they're going to break up with their boyfriend and be housing insecure. There's things that are going to happen. They're going to deal with, end of life of their own families, right? So when someone's worked for you for a long time, and you may end up taking care of their mom or dad or their grandparent and kind of helping them through that process. So, life happens to all of us. I think the thing is just there's a few of us that can let life happen to them and then, put on our boots go to work, and still take care of other people, even while we're dealing with whatever it is that we are, right? And so the goal is for the staff and the residents to not be able to perceive whatever it is that we're dealing with in our own lives. It doesn't always work that way, and sometimes you have these really intimate relationships with the people that you care for, or when people that you work with, and so they can tell when something's off or something's going on. But that's no excuse to put on a bad performance, right? It's a bit like a play every day. It happens whether or not, and if you can't make it, then the understudy's up and next person up, and we're gonna put on the play for the day. And that's really the way we have to look at it, is that we're a Broadway play for the people that
Mhm.
are living there every day, and we don't end. And obviously, we hope the play never gets canceled, but regardless of the critics, right? But yeah,
Yeah.
really, I mean, you have to show up every day and come prepared to give people moments of joy, to keep people safe. And in order to do that every day, you've got to be a pretty tough, or in the original case, very grit heavy, very gritty person to do that.
Yeah, great. I would say what would you call it? Resilience is usually probably the trait, I guess, that we refer to. But yeah, resilience, of course, going to be ups and downs over 10 years, especially. So if you're not resilient, you don't have the grit, you better develop it pretty quickly.
Yeah.
So
Definitely do something else, right? This
yeah.
is not this. I mean, I think there's people that think this is the most operationally intensive business in the world, right? Because you've got 24 hours, right? You've got, caregivers, nurses, and you've also got hospitality. So you're at the intersection of healthcare and hospitality, which are two very operationally heavy businesses, and you have both that collide. Your private pay, so expectations are very high, right? If you ever want to find out what expectations are, have someone pay you
Mhm.
eight, nine, $10,000 a month to take care of a loved one, and now all of a sudden that comes with expectations, as it should.
Yeah.
And so essentially, you have healthcare, hospitality, and high expectations
Mhm.
in a very labor heavy industry. So, I mean, it may not be the most operationally intensive business in the world. Maybe a nuclear plant or something would be, but let's just say it's in the top 1% of operationally intensive businesses.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, private pay, like you said, usually a different animal. Fee for service. My wife has a fee for service dental practice, different from accepting insurances and all those things, right? Different expectations for sure. So quite the operation you do have running. Now you mentioned team being a big part of that. So what's been the biggest learning you've had as an employer?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for us is that you're going to hire different people if you're in the office every day. And so when I started, I was the manager. So I would go in and I would do all those things. And then eventually, as we grew, even if you got two locations and they're 10 minutes apart, you can't be in both at the same time. You got to replicate yourself. So I think over time, just kind of getting in touch with the type of person that you would hire for a startup isn't necessarily the same person you would hire midstream, and isn't necessarily the same person you would hire if you were going to sell the business. I mean, we don't have any intentions of doing that. But my point is I think just realizing that who you are as an operator, who you are as an entrepreneur, um, if you remove yourself from the equation, right, then it doesn't really matter how well you collaborate with somebody, because you're not part of the equation. So you're looking for a different avatar of people you hire, right? You want a lot of people that are self-starters. You want a lot of people that, don't depend on you for things, because otherwise you're just making yourself the lynch point of more and more and more and more things. And so I'm very hands-on, but I also have communities that I don't have to be hands-on. And so I get to do the stuff that, I enjoy, or what they need the most support with. So probably the biggest revelation is just, the people that I hired initially aren't necessarily the same people that I hire now. And, probably the best example of that is, when you're first starting, you're trying to save money. And then when you're now you're pursuing greatness no matter what it costs, because ultimately, that greatness, a great employee, a great leader, a great nurse is going to pay for themselves, many
Mhm.
times over, if they're truly great.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. So who you're hiring depends on where you are in your journey. So early
Yep.
on, a little different, later on, a little different. And I think so being cognizant where you are on your journey probably helps, which is good. What about, so you've, again, been doing this 10 plus years. If you were to start over today, right? Start fresh, new slate, what would you do different?
Um, Probably, I think the biggest thing was is that we had our homes in Dallas, and they've done very well. They're the ones that opened in 2015 and 2016 and 2017. And then we got very focused on developing our signature campus. So our houses in Dallas, we have 8-bed houses spread, throughout a little part of the city. We also buy land and would build purpose-built 16-bed homes and put them all on one campus. So we'd have all the advantages of the big facility and then all the advantages of personalization. That signature product is still, we still think from a quality perspective and for a lot of ways that still allows for some of the best outcomes. But I think in kind of pivoting to that new model, we kind of lost sight of the fact that, the stuff that we're doing in Dallas is really, they do a wonderful job and there's incredible demand for it. And so I think I probably would have liked to have grown both product types or service types, kind of concurrently. And so we're actually kind of toggling back. In this phase, I think acquiring existing facilities that are maybe struggling because they have the wrong operator or the wrong
Mm,
concepts in place. It's actually a better time in the cycle to do that than there is to develop, right? Development has a
mm,
lot, like if I buy an existing facility, I don't have to concern myself with tariff policy, but if I'm building something, I kind of do, right? Ultimately, when you're building something, you're subject to changes in interest rate while you're building. If you don't have a floating rate debt on an acquisition, then you don't have that problem. A lot of your big costs are fixed or known to you. So I would say probably not disrespecting the value that our Dallas operation, our small boutique homes, the value they bring to us and our residents and society. So I think we'll have a renewed emphasis moving forward on just doing small 5,000, 4,000 square foot houses in premium areas. I think are going to continue to be a big part of our story moving forward. And I don't think I necessarily would have thought that, say, 3 years ago. But that was just because, I got the shiny penny syndrome, right? I started to focus
mm.
on the other thing. And look, I love what we're doing in Louisiana. I love what we're doing in Denton. But there's no reason why we can't have both service platforms, growing simultaneously.
Yeah, cool. Well, you got to shift with the market, of course, because especially when you're in business for a long time, because it will shift. So,
Yeah.
cool. What else we got? What's the next goal or milestone? So again, a lot of things you've accomplished over the number of years. What's next?
Um, I think the next goal is just to get all communities, above 90% occupancy. We're 2 out of 3, right? So we have 2 out of 3 regions are above 90%. So, that's probably the next big goal or milestone. And then, ultimately our goal is to just be, I guess whenever you ask the question, someone said maybe you're the biggest. I guess I would like to just be the biggest in this space, right? So to kind of take away
Yeah,
those things.
yeah.
And it's not because the biggest necessarily means anything. It's because I believe in order to be the best at this, you have to scale it, right? So there's probably an individual out there right now that owns an 8-bed or a 10-bed facility that works in it every day, and they're doing amazing work. And probably situation by situation, they may be doing more, better quality than a lot of places that have more beds. But a person at 90% efficiency helping 100 times more people is going to be making a bigger impact. And so I feel like the problem with this business for most people is that they stop when they're too small. And in business, small, medium, large, they all have their challenges, they all have their problems. I think small is going to obviously always allow the best quality, and I think large is always going to allow the best scaling, and just kind of finding that balance, that Goldilocks principle between, being so small that you got to go into the office every day and you can't hire anybody, all the way to the places that are so big that you can't do anything without sending off 7 emails to the corporation. That there's when you're
Mm,
taking care of another person, they don't want the 7 emails, but they also don't want the no resilience, right? They don't want, okay, a person's on vacation and quality falls off. And so striking that balance is really important. So, I think our goal is to, have 1,000 beds kind of in a tight area. And ultimately, that will allow us to be a big player in this space, but also be true to our values, which is small, personalization, and intimate, right? So, a single boutique hotel, for example, it's a great thing. But if you own a bunch of boutique hotels, then you get a lot of the advantages that come from that. And so it's no different in assisted living, right? Having a large portfolio, different offerings, different geographic exposure will allow you to help and serve more clients in the places that they want to live and the places they want to, their family wants to work and play and live also.
Yeah. So you just want to be number one, period. Number one. They don't have to ask, right?
Yeah, it's okay. That's what I'm known for. We're the
Yeah.
we're the we're the we're the the biggest small assisted
Yeah.
living
Yeah.
company.
Yeah. No, that's good.
It's like the Reno, right? The biggest small little town in the world. We want to be the
Yeah.
biggest small provider.
Yes. No, I love it. So again, certain people are looking for that. You want to be the best at it. So before we get into our last question, how could people get in touch? How can they follow you, or how can they contact you if they wanted to?
Yeah, so if you're watching on Zoom, my name is just in the corner there. It's an unusual name, so I'm pretty easy to
Mhm.
find, right? So obviously, a lot of people follow me on LinkedIn for content related around this or kind of storytelling. Our company, The Sage Oak. So the primary website is thesageoak.com for our Dallas locations. And then you can obviously reach out to us there. So thesageoak.com. And then you can shoot off an email if you have any questions. I would say just briefly that people reach out for three reasons, right? They reach out because their loved one needs assistance, right? The sageoak.com will be perfect for that.
Hmm.
Some people reach out because they're interested in potentially wanting to invest in the stuff that we're doing. TheSageOak.com will be a fine place to get a hold of us there. And then the third thing would be some people want me maybe to assist them in their startup or their assisted living or memory care facility. I don't really take on consulting clients much, but they can still reach out and we can have a conversation. If nothing else, I can point them in the right direction on where to go. So yeah, TheSageOak.com. And then my email is just Loe, at TheSageOak.com.
All right. Sounds simple. Simple enough. Oh, well, relatively
Yeah.
simple since people can see your name. So
Yeah.
good stuff. Well, last question. Any special offers for listeners, viewers that are out there?
Yeah, so we strangely enough, no, but that actually is in fact the offer. And so the reason is that when you're in a relationship business like ours, when people put out specials or incentives or discounts or whatever, they're really telling the consumer to that their value is eroded or eroding, right? So for example, I always like to do this. Most people, if they're lucky, they might do this one or two times in their life where they're looking for a place for mom or dad, right? But most people understand the concept of babysitters. So if you had two babysitters side by side and one's like, oh, I'm doing a 2-for-1 special. I'll watch two kids for the price of one. Do you really feel like that person's going to be a babysitting professional, right? Are you going to be checking your phone more at dinner when you're out on date night, or whatever the case may be? So, you don't really want. There's a saying, okay, if you go see a brain surgeon, a divorce attorney, or an assisted living facility, you have a problem that you want to solve. No one's calling a brain surgeon, a divorce attorney, or an assisted living facility if they don't have a problem to solve. And so, do you want the cheapest brain surgeon, right? Do you want the brain surgeon that's doing, 10% off for March Madness, right? It sounds kind of preposterous, right? But in an industry like ours, actually, you want a place that is very transparent about their pricing and that you don't have to worry about, hey, did they offer some crazy special? Not because no one's offering you specials in business because they care about the consumer. They're offering you specials in business because they think it'll manipulate the consumer into choosing their product. And so that's why there's a whole science behind it. So we frankly don't believe in that. We believe that the best value we can offer somebody is to do our jobs well. We try to keep promises that we make, and we try to keep promises maybe somebody else made to you that they didn't keep. And so for that reason, we're not a company that really believes in email blast specials and discounts and things like that. And ultimately, most of our clients would tell you that they no longer want those things because what they want is for you to say what you'll do and do what you'll say. And that's really what people want in this space.
All right. So the special is you can reach out, like you said, right? And have a
Absolutely.
conversation, right? That's the
Sure.
special.
Yeah.
Getting in touch is special.
Yeah.
So cool. Good deal. Well, Lo, really appreciate you again being open, honest, and forthright, and giving some of our audience some good details about not just, of course, what you do, but some of the journey that you've been on. So hopefully they can take the learning and apply to their businesses as well. So with that, we'll say thank you, and we'll wrap up. And we hope everyone can harvest all the info you put out.
Yeah. Thanks, Sean, for having me, and looking forward to seeing the episode when it airs.
Awesome. All right. Thank you. Talk soon.
Yes, sir.